Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So, like Rory mentioned, my name is Harvey. I am a UX designer with IBM in our team called Client Engineering. I've had a whole lot of hats. I've been a mechanical engineer in the past. I've done production assistance. I've done customer support in a startup in San Francisco. So there's a lot of different things on my path to becoming a designer at a major international corporation in Europe. I am based in Berlin, Germany, in downtown Berlin. And I've always had experience working in medium size, and in this case, a larger enterprise organization, specifically inside of innovation labs or MVPs, working on MVPs to try and prove, in this case, the efficiency and the efficacy of IBM technology, especially around hybrid cloud and AI. Originally from the US, Washington, D.C., to be specific. So there have been a lot of cultural challenges, but also a lot of learnings that I think I've endured over my time as a designer in both regions. But today, what I would like to speak about is stakeholder centric design, or in other words, and maybe borrowing this a little bit from a longer title from like the Stanley Kubrick and Dr. Strangelove, but how retargeting your design process can make you a more influential part of your organization. In many of these companies, digital innovation is preached from upper management, but it is unfortunately implemented in less than ideal ways. For example, a new designer coming into an organization as a new hire, I'd found that it is vital to establish both yourself and the design community as the champion of good design practice, as well as the shepherd of incremental change to introduce a culture of experimentation as smoothly as possible. While experience has given me insight into the workings of design at smaller corporations, I do believe that the lessons learned are applicable across roles. It doesn't really matter what your background is, if it's design or other disciplines, and it could also be and has been implemented in larger teams, because it really should be our goal as designers and as professionals to build successful businesses while creating positive, inclusive, and collaborative environments. So, in summary, I'll go over understanding resistance from those stakeholders, approaching stakeholders as users, learning, educating, and reflecting to wrap it up. I really believe it's important to be open, to never make it difficult to access resources and receive information from all directions. And while personal processes might be compromised, at times you'll at least have a better understanding of your teammates and stakeholders. When designing anything, there's no one right way. That's important to remember. And you have under no circumstances compromised yourself. I think a little bit of background about me. I started in San Francisco at a company called Udemy for online learning. And I was there actually doing customer support. And as I progressed and learned more about the company, I actually was able to transfer my experiences into one of user experience or customer experience. So what we did, especially as user designers, not in Udemy, but as later in my career, I came in with big, bright eyes. I thought that everything that I learned online from online courses, I would be able to just immediately take the largest problem that a company is facing and tackling it from the beginning. I thought that I could provide value, completely transform my workplace overnight. I think we all have those big starry eyes as we go in. I thought I'd go in, grab users, talk to them for hours, write down everything that was said, trying to what they were trying to accomplish. And when faced with a particular problem, I could just come up with a handful of solutions, or go in, write a few tasks for some quick usability testing. If a user got stuck, I'd be able to quickly put a report together of what was a high, medium, and low priority. And you win awards. Your favorite designer talks to you. You're able to immediately and instantly get a seat at the table. But in reality, this was not me. You don't walk in and go after the biggest problem first. While these techniques might not be wrong in principle and not wrong in intention, I think it's really critical to remember that our workplaces are still social environments. There's plenty of resources out there for HR departments that state importance of communicating team values to new hires. Unfortunately, most of these recommendations come from within the organization. And when trying to get your expertise into the organization, sometimes there is a bit of resistance. And this can occur either as designers going to other disciplines and sharing the spirit or the lessons from design. But it could also come from, just a personal or an individual coming into a new place and not necessarily being able to impact or influence as quickly and as instantaneously as we may like. So, and I think this is especially when starting out. Remember, taking on the most visible aspect or feature of a company is a huge project, and it's more important to first lay important groundwork down that allows for the foundations of a relationship with your coworkers, managers, and stakeholders to flourish. So, like I always say, you're the new kid on the block and may be perceived as ignoring the lessons learned. And I think that's really important, is understanding where things have come from before you can kind of dive head and going forward. So I think we've also been hit over the head, and sorry, I should have said if there's a kind of a flash warning if this is a little bit too fast, but we understand the process as designers. We have all of the tools already to be successful, no matter the experience level. But I think it's important to return to the basics. And user-centric design might look like this, and I know everyone knows this, so I don't want to beat anyone over the head with it. But it's important to always come back to what we've learned. There are certain steps that we sometimes take for granted when building something physical or digital, but we can also take a step back and apply this same process to situations and to relationships, and most importantly, to people as well. I think that UX really extends beyond our work and our work in our work location, and can be useful in everything that we do. And here I come to the point that as designers, we can actually see ourselves as the product. So properly complete your user discovery if you are the product. Why were you hired? Why are you in this organization in the first place? What problems were those making those decisions? What did they think they could solve by bringing someone like a designer in? What issues was the company experiencing? And what was being used before? By exploring some of these and how we can alleviate some of these issues is a way and a path forward to be more influential inside of an organization. In many cases, it could be that design was done by external agencies, and the decisions to bring in a team member was to get more control over the process. And I think knowledge and insight like this can be used in our advantage. So breaking down successes and being able to replicate it for decision makers can always be a powerful way to integrate ourselves into organizations. So where I think I always start, if it's in a new team, a new selling team, a new product team, anything like that, it's important to, again, to look back and ask what were the biggest wins over the past couple of weeks, past couple of months of each of those teammate members, to understand what each individual cares most about. I think discovering this history and uncovering similarities between big company wins is one place to look. But also focus on wins that were experienced not only by one member, but as an entire team and as a group. And pulling those characteristics will allow you to create stronger and better connections. In IBM, for example, we are 300,000 people, and it is incredibly important to take those relationships, one, personally, and also put a lot of importance and a lot of weight on them. So figuring out what's going well, what's not going well, and the general state of things, and see where frictions exist between departments. I think one example that I'm working on now inside of IBM is that we, of course, have a design system, but how my team, for example, uses that design system actually needed us to sometimes start from scratch. And that was an interaction between our technology engineers, what we call, our full stack developers, as well as the design team. And what we did to try and alleviate some of that pain was actually building out template pages, not only from a design perspective, but in hand with the developers, so that other teams could come use or find reusable resources, and then build faster and hopefully delight our clients. So I think the big takeaway that I want to say is that because of design, at the end of the day, it's really down to communication. In an ideal world, solutions are developed cross-functionally. But if that is absolutely not possible, then make sure to bring other departments into the conversation as soon as possible to, again, alleviate that feeling of isolation and solving multiple problems at the same time. I want to go into an example of, and this is more of a story of why compromise, so away from design, but I thought it was an interesting little anecdote. There was in 17th century France, the finance minister Nicolas Foucault had spent a ton of money building a magnificent chateau at his estate. He threw a lavish party to show off his connections, cultivated manner and charm, thinking he would be able to make himself an indispensable asset to the king. In 1661, a Louis the 14th, at age 23, goes to this location of the finance minister, the country estate, and he was absolutely outraged by its magnificence. He felt feeling insecure, was outraged by the fact that people were more impressed with the finance minister than the king himself. And in short, he found a convenient excuse to get rid of Foucault, who spent the next 20 years of his life in prison. And after that happened, what happened next? King Louis XIV went ahead to build Versailles, which is, of course, is known today as a much grander and more lavish than the chateau, which I had never heard of before, and to display his charms and his connections. I think the lesson from this is probably a little extreme, but it's coming down to not necessarily don't outshine. Again, remember that we're part of teams. We think that, at least I've had it in the past, where I thought I knew absolutely everything going in, and that has always backfired for me. So a positive example of this would be Galileo, who was clever in observing this law by giving glory to his patrons. In order to solve his problem of funding, he dedicated his discovery of the moons of Jupiter to the Medici family, since the royal symbol of the Medici family was the planet Jupiter. He then commissioned an emblem for them, with each moon representing one of the suns who revolved around the patriarch. The Medici family became his biggest patron, appointing him his official court mathematician and philosopher, and giving him more comfortable life and steady salary. These two lessons actually came from a book that is, I kind of call it the dark side to like how to win friends and influence people, called 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. It discusses how to amass influence and to work with others to accomplish goals. Basically, I think I call it the kind of the dark side, because the other 47 rules, in my mind, are sometimes ethically inept, I think, to say the least. For example, there's a couple that are funny and terrifying. So one is like, use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim, keeping others in suspended terror, cultivate an air of unpredictability. And I 100% do not recommend any of these laws, as they should be implied inside of a workspace. But the underlying rule from these two stories have been invaluable during my time. And I do think they contribute to a positive company culture. Next, how to compromise. So this is thinking before you act. Being patient is an incredibly strong life lesson. It changes someone from who may be against you into a support system, and taking the time to first understand yourself and your stakeholders' emotional and psychological state. So being alert to both what separates them from everyone else, and what they share with everyone else. So being calm, empathetic, soft with people, but also sure in your way. There was a quote, and I wish I remembered exactly who said it, but what a good designer should do is to hold on to opinions, or be strong in their opinions, but hold on to them loosely. So understand each other's basic fears, hate, jealousy, and also primary emotions like love, freedom, family, etc. And once you understand that, you will have not only a lifelong friend at work, but someone to collaborate with as you move forward. So remember that self-interest can be the strongest motive for all, but this, of course, takes time to progress. Um, in my free time, I'm actually a street photographer and portrait photographer. And there's actually a technique that I've learned from photography that has allowed me to, I think, understand some of these lessons that I've mentioned before. In the first contact with a subject, I noticed that it's always important to first find something that they like about themselves inherently. So, for example, it's said if a person will cover half of their face with their hair, you kind of like watch where the hair is parted. You should highlight the other. And how this translates to the workplace is by figuring out what they promote, either internally at work or publicly through blogs, LinkedIn, professional profiles, Zing, depending on where you are, or simply through asking what their biggest success at work has been and why they think they accomplished it. So let's find ways to make everyone win, them win, and of course, you yourself and your design practice along with it. The next is a topic, or I guess a technique from sales called objection handling. And I think at this point, I can also describe a little bit more about what my role at client engineering and IBM is. We have obviously technology that we would like our customers to use and our clients to use to become even more successful. But a lot of it is actually, a lot of my job has to do with speaking both with internal and external stakeholders. So it's my goal to build MVPs that prove the value of IBM, and this means I get a lot of pushback from people who either haven't worked with IBM before, haven't worked with my particular team within IBM before. And this tool is a way to really listen to other people and also to prepare a response ultimately. And so it starts with the first step is to clarify. So if an objection comes up, it's important to get the real objection and to try not to create new problems or answer too quickly without first understanding. So, I mean, an example for this would be design always takes too long. And a step would be to first almost repeat that statement back to the stakeholder or whoever you're speaking with. Once you get, you buy in saying, yes, so that's exactly what I said, you can move into acknowledging. Acknowledging another person's objective or objection means that it is time, is basically saying that it is, yes, what you're saying has absolute validity. Allow the other person to feel heard. Allow yourself to even be able to make sure that you heard them correctly. And then move on to responding after that clarification. If the objection is valid, then it will be helpful to offer, of course, a solution. For example, the one I said about time, we first, or sorry, and this is a common for me. Yep. We have clarified and acknowledged that the client is concerned about the time it takes to design things. Then the response would be to establish one, how much time exactly is too much time, and then surface potential dangers of rushing design, as well as offering a hypothetical solution that addresses the concern directly. And when I say hypothetical, I also want to make sure that it's a legitimate. So, of course, if you need to talk to someone outside of your team or developers to make sure that something is technically feasible, definitely do that. So make sure that the offer that you said come back if the client says, oh, it can't take more than 4 weeks, then you could say something like, okay, so if we can finish this in 4 weeks, is there any objections to moving forward? Because I don't recommend lying under any stretch of the imagination. Finally, ask if the offer addresses a concern. Hopefully, this should solve any objection, but of course, if another objection is offered, you can begin from the start and try again until you address or clarify, acknowledge, respond, and confirm every objection as you move forward. Things are easy to remember. Yeah, everyone is still at a job and everyone has bosses. In corporate sales, this is kind of the I guess the part of IBM that I'm working in now. When selling a product or service to someone, it's better to think that you're removing reasons why someone can say no, because ultimately the person you're on the phone with or sending emails with will need to defend that purchase or that decision higher up the chain or higher up the line. So take away reasons that someone can say no. In many cases, cost is a factor. For example, if ethnographic research costs too much, try bringing in users to the office, or conduct remote testing or guerrilla testing in the street. And if your company won't go for that, think of testing ideas within your organization. I know it's not ideal, and I know we always tell ourselves that we are not the user, but always try and break it down to more digestible chunks so that your process is first understood, and then you can take that next step in the direction that you would prefer to do. The point being that you can treat your design approach like an MVP. You don't have to have the lab to show value, so step down the list to a more reasonable alternative that eliminates stakeholder concerns. And when the results come back and show value in the design process, then it'll be possible, like I said before, to move back towards the ideal situation. This is when I used to use Evernote, but bring all of your learnings together in your own repository, and then collect each of the departments in whatever tool you use. If it's Box or Notion, Evernote, wherever it's stored, make sure that that learning and that information lives there. Write out what you've learned in your own articles, and know which metrics are important to the business so that you can fall back on them and when the time comes. This has saved a lot of time. And also it's like the way that we build, for example, like case studies for ourselves, for portfolios, almost do that internally for the company or the organization that you're working with, and then sharing those out is a way to increase trust, to basically increase the amount of knowledge that you are perceived to have, and the number of projects that you are able to work on going forward. Like I said, building that trust is the most important aspect of implementing a concept of design, and that your stakeholders and the rest of the team must be aligned on it and what you can offer. There are a million ways to do things, so remember that there's a difference between consensus and alignment. Alignment is not consensus. Consensus is when you take overlapping parts of individual opinions and highlight what is common. This is usually the lowest hanging fruit, and everyone is left with something missing. Alignment is seeing on what the desired outcome could be. You do not have to have the same opinion or solution to be aligned on intent and outcome. This can mean committing to a decision or direction that is not universally agreed upon. Alignment is the goal. That way you'll be able to objectively say, yeah, we wanted to accomplish this and we didn't. If not, it's no problem. And the conversation will open up to what went wrong and how to address it moving forward. Next is building trust by starting small. This came from a podcast from Abigail Hart Gray. It was the design podcast, or Design Better, from a few years ago that I really liked. And it was pick something which has no value to the company currently, little or no value, and choose that to do a rapid kind of workshop sprint process to rebuild it. This way you can introduce your way of doing things in a completely non-threatening manner, connect with different parts of the organization, convince a team of your way of working. And if not, no one minds if it didn't work, because it was a section of the product that was overlooked to begin with. I think there is another way to also think about this. And that is even with, and not saying that this is how client engineering exactly does it, but what we do is try to reduce the risk that our clients are facing. We do that by working with clients for 6 weeks at really is no cost to them or anything like that. We work and prove that by continuing with IBM, what we can do is really prove value and help move the needle on whatever business goal we unearth during our workshop and our process. Make those learnings available. So passive education is about making information accessible to stakeholders and the company as a whole. Understand the users that you're building for, maintain the need for user-centric design, but understand that these users are users of your users as well. I'm talking about stakeholders, understanding them, while whoever happens to be above the claims uh, are as the holder of knowledge. It's the job of the designer to bring new insights into their line of vision. Yeah. And this is one that's, I think, more on the personal level, but holding conversations outside the normal environment to break up the monotony of the daily routine. I know it's hard, kind of coming out of the remote work, but if there's an idea you want to watch on wear your watch on the, there's an idea that if you wear your watch on the other hand for the day, then the day can feel more memorable. This is so basically trying to find or building alignment outside of your normal working locations. If it's going to a coffee shop, if it's changing backgrounds, if it's doing just something that isn't the same. For example, we use WebEx inside, and then we try to use things like digital whiteboarding tools. If it's Mural, if it's Miro, if it's Figma and FigJam, try and do things in a slightly different way with the tools that you have, so that those ideas are a little bit more unique. And again, bring it all back to a shared repository. Don't underestimate the power of legacy. So everyone understands the need for change in the abstract, but on the day-to-day, people are creatures of habit. Too much innovation can be traumatic and can lead to pushback. If you're new to a position or in a new organization or working with a new client, try to build that base first. So make a show of respecting the old way of doing things, and if change is necessary, make it feel like a gentle improvement on the past. There is like an experiment that demonstrated the endowment effect. So this is by Daniel Kahneman, Jack Knecht, and Richard Thaler. They brought 3 groups of participants in and completed a mock psychological study, basically filling out it was basically they asked them to fill out a survey. That it doesn't really matter. They were doing some type of like paper quiz, but the most important thing was actually the gift that they gave. So the first group came in and they were given choice between a mug and a chocolate bar as a reward for doing this mock study. They set both gifts on the table, and they found that 55 ended up picking the mug and 45 ended up with the candy. So it's about even. The gifts were about the same, had the first same value to begin with. But the second group came in and they were given the mug before completing the task. And only after finish it, they asked the participants if they wanted to switch the mug that they got from the beginning to the candy. And 90% stuck with their first reward. And they flipped it exactly, gave the candy bar the first time, and the same result happened. People stuck with the first thing they had, the first gift or reward for completing this mock study, and did not want to switch to the other. And I think this is a really good lesson, is that basically there is a lot of value to what has part of the legacy, effectively. So someone comes in or proposing very, very strong changes are most likely going to be left with a level of rejection and a little bit of resistance towards those change. You cannot make people see the world your way or value without having to pay homage or pay respect to what already exists. And in short, in summary, including stakeholders, so empathizing with them, think of yourself as the product, and take the discovery phase seriously. And then again, that's your discovery phase, analyzing yourself as the product. As a simple gesture, this could be using old titles for processes or keeping the same name of a group, even when the functions slightly change, will tie you to the past and support you with the authority of history. Make a loud and public display of support for the values of the past, and widely share your learnings with them, them being the stakeholders, in non-confrontational manner. What comes or has been established before seems greater. So habit and history add weight. use this to your advantage, highlight wins in the past, and avoid stirring up too many fears by outshining what has been in place. Remember objection handling, know why things were done and why they were the way they were before moving forward and making incremental changes under old names. And finally, be open and never make it difficult to access resources or receive information from all directions. When designing anything, there's no one right way forward, but when you educate and learn, you have under no circumstances compromised yourself. And thank you very much. If you want to reach out, I'm Che by Design on Twitter. You can also send me an email here at my email address. And I'd love to talk to anyone who has open questions. And yeah, kind of open the floor and give it back to you.
Thank you very much. I thought that was a great kind of presentation, because I'm always, one of the things that I always find from early in my career was I always dislike sales. Sales just seemed a bit kind of, I don't know, icky or something to me. But then as I've gone through my career, everything is sales.
Totally.
So it's kind of, I wish I had done more of learning earlier on.
Yeah, I mean, I think the same thing. I mean, this role that I'm in now, it really does kind of distill down what design is trying to do to individual people, right? Like, we're trying to solve problems, but we're also trying to do them in a way that people feel comforted and like they've been heard all the time. And that's really, again, I think the biggest lesson is that objection handling. That allows you to very clearly step through, empathize, acknowledge what's happened before or where people are at, and then try and come to decisions or potential hypothetical solutions that it feels like you're building collaboratively and you're building with the person you're selling to. So it doesn't become like, hey, buy this. It ends up becoming like, hey, how can we work together to solve that problem? And it kind of changes the angle or the approach.
Excellent. So just to reiterate, you can ask any questions to people out there. You can put those questions into UXDX.com or whichever platform. We're monitoring them all at the moment. But I'm going to start with a question, because something that you started with really kind of connected with how I felt when I started my career. And it was kind of just this drive to kind of just quickly move. And I think from kind of thinking about it, it was in college and school, you're kind of like, learn something, move on to the next, learn something, move on to the next. And then you suddenly hit like a workplace where they're like, no, slow down. Like, you have to kind of take things slowly and work out and build up. And I guess I was kind of the opinion, just tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Yeah.
When in the workplace, it's a little bit more vague. You have to figure out what needs to be done and then do it. So
Yeah.
what kind of advice or anything do you have for people who either are going through that or are trying to manage somebody who's going through that?
Yeah, I think so. The question's like how to help someone who is really just like kind of like gung-ho trying to get into it.
Yep.
I mean,
To kind of step back and think about kind of all those steps that you just described.
Yeah, I think for someone who's kind of in that position, it really is that starting small but go really, really deep. I mean, I think we also talk about, like, T-shapes all the time, having a very, very broad knowledge. That's exactly what the like design education is meant for, right? Or design, our whole background, we learn absolutely everything, and then we want to apply absolutely everything across the board. But if there is a particular team, or a particular project, pet projects could be a great candidate for something like that. Work with someone or identify someone in the organization that kind of might be a potential mentor, and understand what they would like to see or that vision that they want to bring, and then go deep in that topic. And then that kind of gives you a little bit of time to understand how the organization might work, what some of the roadblocks might be in an organization, to really move forward. For someone who might be working with or managing that person, I think it's I think in my past, when I've been managed in those positions, I was always told, like, yeah, just like, understand the history, really know why we're doing things. And there's some positives to that and some negatives. I think the positives are that once you learn, again, legacy systems or legacy processes, you can kind of find the small problems in that, and again, ask or propose incremental changes. The bad thing is, I think sometimes you can also be blinded if you've been in an organization for 15 years. You don't know necessarily the new techniques or new processes. So I think if you're managing that, also be open. I think the saying, and I'm probably going to butcher this completely, but it's like, ask an old scientist about what is possible, and whatever they say is most likely right. But if you ask an old scientist about what is impossible, whatever they say is most likely wrong. And I think that that kind of rings true to design in organizations as well.
That's a great example. We're getting a question in from Paulini, and she's asked, in a process that demands more agility every day, what do you think is the most practical way to share learnings?
Yeah, I think as honestly as quickly as possible. Again, I always try to make this analogy between product and the product designer. As we build MVPs, we do sketches, quick paper sketches, we do wireframes, and we're always encouraged to get that out and show your work as fast as possible. I think most of us are probably using some type of messenger like Slack. There is a great feature that I use all the time on Slack, which is just that video and like kind of showing your screen and then sending it directly. That way we don't get slowed down by writing the perfect text message or perfect message to someone, crafting the perfect email. Just opening up your design tool, sharing your screen, putting your face in the bottom corner and explaining the thought process that you're going through and sending it over to the people who can make a quick decision is a very, very fast way to move agile or to remain agile.
Yeah, I love that. It's kind of an example of thinking out loud, which
Totally.
I think is really powerful, because if people just see the output, they don't realize how you got there. But
Right.
kind of that thinking out loud is really valuable.
Yeah.
So I hope that answered your question, Paulini. One final question that I have, if anybody else wants to send them in, please do. You mentioned, and one of the challenges that I found is that alignment versus kind of consensus.
Yeah.
So some people get quite strong opinions, and getting that alignment you can go almost in circles.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you're trying to get that alignment when somebody is being quite, maybe not stubborn, but quite adamant on a particular position?
Yeah, I think that comes back to because it's really at the end of the day, it's an objection. So I think you have to understand why they don't feel or they don't think that the idea that is being proposed is the right one. Because then when you ask those questions, you force them to identify the problem themselves. So hopefully you can take that direct objection and then solve it or incorporate it in whatever the rest of the team has aligned on, right? It is, again, it's bringing everyone together where we shouldn't be working in silos. One person is not the gatekeeper of all the information. Coming at this from diverse backgrounds, from diverse disciplines is the way that we build strong products. And then keeping that team as tight as possible is, yeah, I think the only way forward, really.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much. I haven't seen any more questions come in. So Taijess says, this is great. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, of course.
Paulini has also said thank you twice now in the chat. So I think some people really enjoyed that. So thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure, Rory. Thank you.
Thanks.